Welcome back to Voices of Impact, the show where we uncover the identity shifts, defining moments, and courageous decisions behind leaders who are creating meaningful impact in the world. Today's conversation is about something many high achieving leaders quietly wrestle with. What if the reason you've been playing small isn't because you lack potential, but because you've been conditioned to believe that becoming more of yourself is too much? Interesting question, right? So, joining me today is Shabana Markar, a healthcare professional, entrepreneur, humanitarian, speaker, and founder whose life's work has been dedicated to serving others while building businesses and organizations rooted in compassion, purpose, and impact. So, she's a founder of Miracles for Mercy, host of the Mercy Queen podcast, and creator of multiple mission driven ventures. Shabana's journey is a powerful reminder that purpose and success do not have to exist separately. So, for more than 2 decades, she has served communities through healthcare, philanthropy, and humanitarian work, while continuously challenged the belief that leaders must choose beyond making an impact and creating abundance. But behind the accomplishments, there's a deeper story. A journey of breaking free from conditioning, releasing the need to fit into expectations, and finding the courage to build a life that reflects who she truly is. So there are just many leaders, especially women now, carrying invisible patterns of shrinking, overgiving, proving, and prioritizing. Right? I've been there. A lot of women are being there. So her message is clear that you don't have to abandon yourself to serve others. You don't have to choose between purpose and prosperity, and you don't have to shrink to belong. So today we'll explore what happens when we stop living from those inherited expectations and start leading from that truth, alignment, and authenticity. So Shabana, I'm excited to have you here. Welcome to Voices of Impact.
Thank you so much for such a beautiful introduction.
Of course. So let's begin with your story and your mission. So you've spent over 2 decades serving others through healthcare, entrepreneurship, humanitarian work. So looking back, what were some of the defining moments that shaped the woman and leader you are today?
I feel that some of the defining moments that have really shaped how I perceive leadership is maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. It's a little bit of a story, but I'd always wanted to scuba dive, and it was contraindicated because of my mental health, that if you have depression, anxiety, that you shouldn't scuba dive. And at that time, my husband was like, if you want to do it in Cancun, we don't need to necessarily report that you have these situations, go for it. And the reason I share this story, because I think it was a pivotal moment in answering the question that you asked. But what ended up happening is, to do the scuba diving exactly in the ocean, you have to pass the test with the instructor. And in that test, everyone has to take out the mouthpiece and be able to take it out in the pool water and put it back in. And that's kind of a conditional pass to be able to allow yourself to go under the water with the instructor. And I couldn't pass the test. Everyone else had left the poolside, and I got to stay with a very handsome instructor, and I didn't pass the test. And so at that point, it's like, you've been trying all day. It is a little bit of a risk, but if you want to go underwater, I will take you. And keep in mind, for me at that point, it wasn't as easy, not just because of my mental health, but also because at that point I was maybe around 260 pounds. And so to even get into this suit was like, a little bit difficult. And by the time I'd, gotten there and I jumped in the ocean, realizing I did want to take the risk, when I jumped in the ocean, I panicked. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, like, am I actually going to be able to go under? And two thoughts emerged into my mind, as if, do you want to proceed or not? And the one thought was, if I go under, what is the risk? And the risk is, if I go under and the mouthpiece comes out 50 feet underwater, by the time they try to resuscitate me, I could die, right? And the second thought that came to mind is, well, if I should do it on the case of potentially not making it back up, if there's a, mishap. The second question that entered my mind is, if there was a young girl out there who had asked me, were you afraid to do something? And did you do it? And I had to honestly say, you know what? I wanted to scuba dive, but I was too afraid to, and I couldn't lead by example. The thought of that, not being able to say, yeah, I was afraid, but I did it anyways. So I said, let's do it. And I did it. And the poor scuba diver, by the time he came up, the instructor, his arm was red because I was holding on with death grip, right? And I did it, and I do want to do it again one day. But the reason in answering this question is, sometimes the greatest hindrance to, especially a woman entrepreneur, is not just the other people that may cause you to shrink or disbelieve in your abilities to do what you believe you can. Right? Sometimes the capacity of belief is yourself. And to kind of recognize the distinction between honoring yourself enough to believe in yourself is sometimes the harder battle than all the people that may tell you you can never do it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And a lot of people, I'm pretty sure, I mean, I know there's like, I struggled with the swimming and I can resonate a little bit. I just couldn't do it. But then at the end of the day, like I tried. And like you said, it's really about entrepreneurship is knowing your self-worth. And people might say that you can. And I had family. And of course, you know, you and I come from a very like women of color, South Asian background. And there are going to be people who conditioned you to think one way and go into this path. But even if you're scared, just still do it anyway, because then you don't want the regrets later on. And I'm glad that you took that route and it's similar. And the fact that you connected that with entrepreneurship, absolutely. That's a huge defining moment because sometimes I really realized like I was in corporate for a long time, but if I didn't take the entrepreneurship path or even try, I know I would regret it. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I know your journey is one of service, but service often comes with sacrifice. So, were there any moments when you realized you were overgiving, right? As women, I know we have these patterns that come up. I've also had this for so many years, but giving so much to others because we're so empathetic and that you had to reconnect with yourself and your own needs. Like, how did you balance the two?
That I highly, highly recommend for any woman who's out there who wants to pursue entrepreneurship at any level or even manage their lives is a book right now that was written by Emma Grade that is Start With Yourself. I actually saw her with Shannon Boz at an event that she was speaking at in San Francisco. And the reason I'm answering your question with this is because her book as a business entrepreneur book actually starts with emotions, anger for women, right? Anger, sadness, fear, right? And so to imagine a business book written by a woman that on the first part of the book, she's talking about the regulation of emotions that a woman may go through while leading, because we are lovers, we are empathetic, we are mothers, we are sincere, we are givers, right? But the second part of this book talks about trade-offs, and it talks about the identification of what people perceive to be perfect motherhood or perfection in general, right? And I think for me, when it comes balancing empathy, the hardest thing that I've had to learn is that not everyone, whether it's business or even your personal life, is as well intended as you are. And so sometimes, even if you make mistakes, sometimes learning that, you know, choosing yourself doesn't have to be selfishness that's kind of connected to self abandonment in a way, or abandoning someone else that may manifest you feeling guilty, right? The only way you're truly ever able to kind of give to the highest level to anyone is, you know, when you feel full. And it's a balance for women, because sometimes when I'm trying to manage my kid or, you know, do everything, sometimes I realize my sugars are higher because I'm not eating as healthy as I should be, or I'm not exercising, or I'm not sleeping enough. And so all of that will, you know, your self-regulation is very important to how you operate your sincerity and the model that you're trying to build, right? Because the owner and the uniqueness, and most of all, the highest level of presence and dignity comes to whatever you're trying to do in life from giving dignity to yourself.
Yeah.
But that's something that I think is a formula that everyone needs to discover. I think sometimes people ask me for a formula to help with anything. And I think that's a self-awareness formula that you need to sit with yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. 1,000%. And I love exactly what you said is a lot of women, we just tend to overgive. And my mother has done this, and it came from my mother, and that's how I am. And I just did not set the boundaries because I'm always about serving. And especially with entrepreneurship and personal life, like you said, if you're really empathetic as a person, sometimes like you just blur that line and you just keep overgiving because that's what we're taught. That we have to kind of go back and slow down and be like, okay, well, where do I set those boundaries? And it's okay to set boundaries with your clients, with people, with your, you know, team members, or, you know, your own kids and everything. Like, I need to rest. I need self-care. And it's okay to put yourself first. And I totally agree. I think it's a balance, especially for women. We don't tend to do that. And it's like, obviously, and where does that come from? We talk about mother wound, father wounds, but it's really that conditioning, right? That we're taught. And it's like my mom taught, like, you should always give. Even today, like, she still tells me, like, why don't you help your brother out? Why don't you do this? Why don't you help the other people out? And I'm like, I need to take care of myself, right? So really fill your own cup before you fill others' cup. And like you said, it really comes from the deeper aspect of self-worth, right? Like, you have to be whole on your own first before you help others. Yes, absolutely. I know you were saying something.
No, I feel, but more so sometimes what I deal with versus like feeling whole is more so like the judgments that I receive for what I'm trying to do. I've
Yeah.
had a lot of people assume that I don't love my kids or my family because I've created a mission that may help other families or other kids. I've had people call me selfish. I've had people really even sometimes even my own family, like literally try to physically shut down my intentions to operate anything purposefully, to not see me succeed or to not even sometimes validate you in your endeavors, even if they have a beautiful, wholesome premise, right? I've
Right.
had people sometimes, even the worst of it is sometimes judge the metrics of my success only based on, hey, where's the money, right?
Right.
And
Right.
I think some of that is to me the more traumatizing parts of my journey versus even me just self-caring through it, because you want the people that are supposed to be your friends or your family to be the ones who are like the biggest supporters. And yet sometimes you feel like they're the biggest block to you just growing and expanding. And
Yeah.
that's a hard reality to face, because then you're not only dealing with the hard journey of building an empire, right?
Yeah.
Which is mine, is called the mercy mission. But then I'm also having to constantly give mercy to myself and self-care, where you're right. Sometimes I have to tell people that I'm sorry, I'm unavailable to even speak to you. I'm there if you really need me, because the boundary is necessary to protect my peace. And that's totally okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people can resonate, especially me right now. Exactly what you said, because my parents and family do not support my business right now, even though it's expanding. And even if I say something, they're like, well, where's the money? Right at the end of the day. And I used to literally, part of the conditioning of overgiving, I was over explaining everything and justifying it. And I realized, why do I need to? If someone doesn't understand, this is a journey about me and between me and the divine or the universe, right? So why do I have to explain everything and over explain it to someone who doesn't understand? And to your point, we need to set the boundaries and protect that energy. It's okay if they misunderstand and misjudge, right? And that's something that I had to overcome and heal from, that I needed approval. And that's the biggest thing that my partner asked me once. And there was that trigger. And he was like, do you really need your parents' approval for you to build your empire, Vina? And I was like, I don't know, maybe sometimes I do. Like, I need their approval. I need everyone's approval. But that was a wound that I had to overcome. And now I'm just like, you know what? I don't need to tell my family every single thing that's going on. You have to set energetic boundaries. And I know I talked to another sister about this, but this goes deeper into the ancestral healing as well. But it's okay to be unapologetic about setting those boundaries and practicing self care and realizing that you don't need to explain everything over give for someone who won't support you, who doesn't understand it. So, yeah, absolutely. I love how we went into the depths of what this really looks like, the root cause. It's some parts of it's self-care, but is it really going and getting honest with yourself and being vulnerable? So absolutely love the internal shifts that have been happening in your life as well. So, and I know that today's conversation and episode is called The Courage to Stop Shrinking, right? So choosing your truth, and that's what we're talking about. So what other feel like, especially with family and culture or other expectations, what are some of the beliefs that you had to personally unlearn in order to become fully yourself? I know we touched on a few, but is there anything else that you want to share?
I feel that people, when they see any human being, automatically make assumptions based on what they may have seen or heard in media, and sometimes we really forget that every human being has their individual life and every human being has their individual journey. So even though I might be identified as a Muslim American Indian with Yemeni roots, there's so much more to me than the labels that may be perceived as me, right? And I think that's something that I've had to unlearn, that, okay, if I'm dealing with a Muslim or a non-Muslim, for example, sometimes the preset of what I would have expected from a human being based on my social conditioning has really been in some ways defiled, because I've seen in the past 3 years so much reality of truths that did not match my perception of reality. And the unconditioning happening, it really taught me that, judging, when they say don't judge a book by its cover, it really is, first of all, like, never condemn a human being unless, if like someone were to say, oh, don't go on being a da da da. I think part of giving that openness to a fair chance, irrespective of what someone may have said about that person, right? To give that person the fact and the reality that even if there was something yesterday that someone may have said, hey, that's a warning sign, to at least give the openness to experience them yourself. with the open heart that whatever a person may have been by night may not be what they're trying to become in the morning, right? Offering that empathy, but at the balance of the awareness of the information, and yet then coming to conclusions yourself. Because the sad truth that I've learned about entrepreneurship is that it's really based on money. It's really based on net worth. And I really identified that, to look up someone and say, hey, the CEO of Amazon is net worth is this, or the blah, blah, blah's net worth is this, as a kind of a fun activity, I looked up someone who I have a lot of immense respect for to see her net worth. And I looked it up, and it was Maxine Hong Kingston, who's one of the most famous Chinese American novelists in our country currently. She's done immense work. And I looked up her net worth and there wasn't one, right? And I
Mhm.
loved it because I'm like, she doesn't have a worth. No human being really has a worth that should be put a financial net on, right? I mean, what
Exactly.
if I become one day, God willing, the richest woman in the world? I mean, I'm like gooberly wealthy in a way that I can purchase my own island, for example, or do like the movie Crazy Rich Asians, and I can
Yeah.
own the hotel within seconds, right?
Right.
With a phone call and a phone booth. I mean, that kind of richness seems elitely fun and great and manifestation of success. But the true measure of success is not to me like the richness of my wealth, but the wealth of my richness in a way that is conducive to the empathy and light and the power that I use with that wealth, right? Because
Yeah.
in the end of the day, no matter how wealthy you are, it's the memory you left behind to the human being you were interacting with, right? And so, that concept of the Spider-Man, like with great power comes great responsibility. The reason I want to be elitely rich with this mercy mission is to be able to be one of the rich people who can expand on the wealth of the world. And wealth to me is not a net worth value that you can produce on an internet stream,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm about. And that's why to me in my journey, I'm journeying towards it, but that's the intention, but that's not the happy ending of it. Because what if I became a demon after attaining that richness and I change, right? So the evolutionary process has more to do with internal gnosis and spiritual wealth and emotional wealth and intellectual wealth and a lot more, so.
Yeah, absolutely. 1000%. And I love how you talked about the real definition of wealth and power, right? And a lot of people, and we come from that conditioning even now. If you look, just step aside, in the world today, it's all about comparison. Like, how
Oh
much
my
money do
gosh.
you have? What's your car? What's the worth, right? Even today, like, my parents still are like, "Will you start a business?" Like, so what? Your cousin works for Google, Microsoft, and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, okay. I get it. They might have a Tesla, they might have $1 million, but for me, we're purpose-driven entrepreneurs. I love how that's how you are. And there's so many out there, right? There's different types. If they like what they're doing, that's their journey. That's great. But as purpose and the real sustainable growth and business and entrepreneurship. And it's okay to be materialistic, but in the form first, set the foundation, right? Which is the purpose. Why are you here today? What kind of impact do you want to make and what do you want to serve? If you really just serve the people and make it about them and not me and be selfish about it, that's what really matters. And then that materialistic just happens over time, right? And to your point, it's really the spiritual wealth. Wait, so wealth and just, having a good health, a family, just being alive, right? And the divine is going to protect you, the universe is going to protect you, right? And that's like the real definition. So I love how you talked about that there's just like so many people judging us for different reasons, but we have to understand like who we are. And that's exactly what the worth is. Do not tie your self-worth to money or an identity, right? So you need to first understand whoever's listening to really look into who you are, who your values are, and stick within your why and just cut out the noise, right? And go internally. So, absolutely. And that's purpose driven entrepreneurs, I think. And that was my next question that as an entrepreneur, we're focused on the purpose. It's fun and it's nice and we serve everything. And I love how you challenge the idea that purpose and profit are separate. And I just talked to someone before you, and she was like, yeah, I'm all about grassroots and everything, but I haven't thought about my business model and I don't want to put like a number on it. All of a sudden, I ask about money. People are like defensive. So, why do you believe mission driven women leaders don't have to choose between creating impact and creating financial success?
Mission driven leadership, I think mission driven leadership doesn't need to be identified or associated entirely to net worth or richness at all. And I only say this because profit margin, net worth, yeah, it has a lot of value, but also it's also how you conduct yourself. Number one, in the self-awareness of owning your mistakes, because you are human, right? But I think it also about, entrepreneurship. It's also about having integrity, right? For example, like if I'm making a lot of profit, for example, when I wanted to start this empire, what I'm trying to build, I had someone who was willing to invest millions of dollars in my concept and my idea, and he owned a tobacco shop and a tobacco industry, right? And I was like, I'm not judging anyone who smokes or who has, who likes hookah or anything like that. But in knowing that I'm trying to build something that to me is based on the premise of like a little bit of a wholesome ideology to help empower other women and children. My future business model when it opens up will be attached to my nonprofit. I did not want to start the root of the money that I was getting from this human being as a source, right? And also in leadership, right? I mean, I'm human, right? There's times where maybe I might be impatient, but then I also would say that for a man, for example, in any industry, to scream or yell or seem to be impatient or to be rude seems a lot more tolerable and acceptable than if it's a woman, right?
Right.
If it's a woman, it's like, oh, the dragon lady's here, or there's the bee,
Exactly.
right? And looking even at the wonderful movie that just came out this year, with Anne Hathaway again, with, The Devil Wears Prada, right? I mean, she was considered, a witch, a bee, right? And yet she somehow had a huge weight on her shoulders, right? And I only answer it, with kind of sharing about profit margin and intention is because it's so much more in leadership. It's not just about money connected to profit or to purpose. It's also about how you're willing to conduct yourself in the self-awareness of sometimes forgiving mistakes, but allowing yourself to be firm like a man and unemotional like a man and unapologetic like a man in a way that makes your model viable. Because sometimes, and that's why I loved, like I said, Emma Grade's book, because as women, we are emotional. As women, we are empathetic. As women, we are sacrificing. There's so many women in our culture, and especially when you said that, it touched home, who do not pursue any of their dreams because we're expected to be mothers, right? We're expected to be married. We're expected to, like you said, meet the assertions of, oh, I work for Google, or I have a degree, and it's hard when you have societal expectations defining what is worthy of your journey, right? It not only allows you not to be able to be human and make mistakes, but it sometimes creates values that you may not even be aligned with as expectations for you to live by, right? And I think that's sad because, even for me, just real quick, my son wants to do something very different. He may want to go into comedy, or he may want to go into, what is it, like sports broadcasting. And as an Indian mother, when people ask me like, dude, do you not know what he's doing? And I'm like, my kid is so grounded in humility. Do I worry about him? If he's out at 2 a.m, am I worried about him? Not really, because I'm more worried about his mom than him, because he's so grounded and so sincere and such a good kid, right? So for me, it's like that I instilled in him. If he goes out there and says, hey, mom, I'm going to go to college and figure it out, I have complete faith in that kid, right? And I'm also going to neglect his views of if he wants to go into comedy versus being an architect or a surgeon or something or a lawyer. Like, I'm not going to set his journey for him. I'm going to allow him to realize his own journey and what he thinks will make him happy and successful on his terms, not my expectations as an Indian Muslim family that, oh my God, no one's been a comedian in our family. What? You know what I mean? Because he could be a very talented comedian. I honestly believe he's so funny that he could sell out an auditorium just like, a Chappelle one day and take my phone and be like, I get to keep my cell phone. I'm so sorry. You don't get to take your mom's phone. She's not locking it up. But you know what I mean? But that's what I'm saying is that sometimes we change the discourse even for our children because we're so worried about the profit and the Tesla and, who are they, and it's really not fair, especially in South Asian communities, especially in also sometimes Muslim identity as a female of what the expectations are. I mean, the expectation, first of all, to get married is definitely on the agenda, right? For a female, it's like, you got to be smart. You got to also get the degree from Harvard, and then you better get married and have kids and give me grandchildren, right? And anything other than that alternation of that story makes you feel unworthy. It's not fair. It's not fair to women because it's not done to men at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people are listening can relate. I can relate to all of this because it's a very similar journey. If you're the kind of woman who breaks like stereotypes or, is the rebel, you're definitely going to be, people are going to hate you and, judge you. And like you said, this is literally me today. I wasn't like that when I was young because I was just like, let me be like the good kid that my mom raised me, like, And even till today, I'm always questioning things. I'm always being the rebel. Immediately, I'm like not supported. And I'm like, she's like, like, we can't do anything all for you. And immediately goes into like, hey, get married. Like, you're not married. Look at other people. Like, there's that comparison. And yes, for a woman, it's very difficult to do that, a challenge, but it really comes down to knowing who you are and your worth. And to your point, like, you don't have to be in a box. Like, I'm not in a box at all. And just before we got on this call, there's a difference between being the empathetic coach. I'm also a coach as well as a CEO. And sometimes you have to be firm and like, this is it, set boundaries. When I start to do that, immediately there's like backlash, right? And then I go back into like, wait, am I not a good person, right? There's always these questions that a lot of women have. And then I'm like, you know what? There's a balance, right? And it's okay to be both. It's okay to be powerful in a soft way, but powerful as like, being that what we call a badass or the boss babe or whatever you want to call it. There's two sides. And I want every woman here to be like, it's okay to embrace both sides. And it's very important. And some people are not going to like it because that has nothing to do with you. They're just not used to women like this, right? And it's okay to really be unapologetic about it. And yeah, there are going to be, and of course, like you said, I love how you raised your kid and you talked about family values. And that's the next thing, right? The reason why some of us are, breaking the stereotypes is also because of our next generation. And we want to instill those values. And that was something that I was not really taught because my family was more of like, let's just follow the crowd because that's what will people think? But for me, it's more of like, I don't care what he does. And I have the same thing. If my kid wants to go into something else other than entrepreneurship, or if it's just like, my mom would be like, what the hell is this, Vina? And I would be like, no, it's fine. He's a good person. I mean, there's values. He knows what he's doing. He's smart. So it's really about your values and what you're bringing to the next generation, right? And that's what the legacy building is. And we have to shift that paradigm of leadership. So I love how you touched about like the bigger picture is purpose driven leadership, authentic, conscious leadership. And then when you lead from that and in business mission, then everything just completely changes and you build something very different for the next generation, right? Sustainable businesses and a life that's rooted in authenticity, right? So absolutely. And that's where the real impact comes. It's not about just what money you're making. So love this conversation so far. And so going into whether that's nonprofit or profit. And I know that a lot of people are like, hey, you can build a purpose driven business and get the profit as a byproduct of that purpose and that mission. But what does that look like if someone is listening who's an entrepreneur? What does that look like from a day to day business, like in real life?
Two things that I'll touch on is, like once again, not, so what my model basically is, if you were to kind of look it up, it's called the Mercy Mission as an umbrella. And I know it may kind of atone to seem like it's a kind of a conversion of a religious faith because the Mercy Mission it's a very abstract word to a lot of people. A lot of people know compassion or kindness, but mercy is a very kind of something that's not used as often. The reason it's called the Mercy Mission is, if I may expand, it's to globalize one day, hopefully a very healthy fast food industry that not only asserts betterment for our own bodies with, like not as many unhealthy sodas and whatnot, a healthier version, which also separates the vegetarian from the non-veg, in terms of oils and even like grills, right? So we really respect the veggie and vegan authenticity to that versus meat, right? But then at the same time, in the globalization of it, we would also automatically be giving charity when you come to my drive-through, which is Mercy Mediterranean one day. And it would say, spreading mercy with every bite. And I'm currently trying to trademark the name and the tagline because automatically if you came to my drive-through you would know that on that month, for example, Miracles for Mercy, which is my nonprofit, is so aligned with it that automatically a percentage of that monthly profit would go to one of the monthly missions that it endorses, whether it's trafficking, whether it's water building, water building wells, whether it's helping an orphan, whether it's mental health awareness, which is something that I'm also a public speaker of. So having said that, I mean, imagine like, so the tagline for Miracles for Mercy, what's miracles with the number 4 mercy.com is spreading mercy through empathy and light, right? And
Yeah.
the reason I made those taglines similar is to kind of conceptualize that one is food, spreading mercy with every bite. You're bringing food as the breaking bread concept to charity itself. We're healing one another internationally one day, right? And then spreading mercy through empathy and light is to make one realize that it is the inner light within that is what is going to spread the healing in our world. And why not use food as a medium to heal versus hurt, right?
Yeah.
And so it is a concept that everyone can buy into, irrespective of sexuality, religion, culture, and it embraces oneness and through just feeding, right? Through feeding the soul and feeding, the appetite. And then obviously my podcast, which is the Mercy Queen, is to have these kind of conversations as well, Vina, because, true healing is never going to come into fruition no matter how much money you have.
Right.
True healing isn't going to come until, a staunch Hindu can sit with a staunch Muslim, for example, and sit at a table and somehow feel maybe not brotherhood, but at least respect, right? You may not feel like, oh, I love the guy because maybe but your differences shouldn't divide, right? Your differences should breed understanding. And then I also have just started the fourth part of my model, which is the correcta model instead of the trifecta model, which is my mercy mindset coaching. And I only take on a certain clients because I'm a Jay Shetty certified life coach as for last year. And so my goal is to take sometimes celebrity coaching, or non-celebrity coaching for free actually, but maybe like within a 3 or 4 month interim. But the reason I share it as the mercy mission is because one is having a financial concept with two models, which is Luna's Halal Takari and Mercy. And Mercy is the charitable one, but Luna's is also the one that backs it up full financial, right? Then you got nonprofit, which we'd all be contributing to. We'd all be healing. Then we've got the conceptualization of conversation, of openness and being willing to be vulnerable and forgive and offer kindness and mercy and love and empathy. And then it's also the transformation that I might do on a personal level every year of healing people with my coaching to getting people from one destination to another through Jay Shetty's beautiful model of life coaching, right? And so that's what the Mercy Mission is about. And it's a huge endeavor. It's an endeavor that honestly, I spend sometimes 14-hour shifts at my, trade job right now to endorse financially. It's something that is a sacrifice. I travel sometimes. And sometimes for me, Vina, and answering sometimes the hardship of it is the people will look at me and say, why? In the hell, when your life was kind of settled with with a house and a family and a job, why in the hell would you put your finances at risk and your family time at risk to do something like this? And my only answer for that real quick is I was in the pool with my son yesterday. He was 7. And he said, Mommy, jump in. I finally jumped in after doing some business work. And he starts saying, Mommy, you're the best mommy in the world. And I said, no, I'm not. I said, nobody else says that. You're the only one who's, weird enough to say that. And he starts laughing. And I'm like, well, I'm not. But then I have to sometimes explain to him the alternative of when some people might be saying to him, hey, your mommy may not love you because she only cares about her business. And he's saying, Mommy, you do love me. Sometimes I have to sit with him and say, Muhammad, like, I love you, but realize that there may be a kid in El Salvador or in the Philippines or in India that is not mine. It's not biologically mine. And the fact that I'm willing to, expend my thought process, my abilities, my leadership, my sincerity to making an impact that one day, if I make the financial success that everyone's talking about, I'll have 100% authority to even travel with my son and maybe not just teach him what's taught in a book in an academic classroom, but take him to Sierra Leone and say, hey, let's go do nonprofit work together while he's having private tutoring, right? And at the same time, learning more that a book can teach him, which is what does it look like in China? What does it look like in Fiji? What does it look like in Bangladesh, right? Because you'll see people, and that's kind of a vested intention that I have when it comes to me as a mother. For those people who judge me and attack me, they have no idea what my vision breeds. They just judge and attack, right? But imagine Muhammad meeting a little 7-year-old in Bangladesh who doesn't have his privilege and being able to show kindness that is not meant to be like, I'm better than you, but I see you and I care about you and I love you and you're not, and that's something that's deep that is needed in our world. And so that's the Mercy Mission. And that's what I'm about. And honestly, being a part of the reason I've developed it is because I can, because I know I have the intelligence. I know I have the patience. I know I have the leadership, and I know I'm a risk taker. And so for me to know that in me and to deny my light and say, okay, well, my husband said not to do it. My mom said not to do it. My dad said not to do it. Well, I'm so sorry, God, but I'm going to do it. Yeah. And my measurement of my success is not going to be finances. The measurement of my success is going to be that I was a badass enough to freaking try by any means necessary, despite the outcome. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, so powerful. First of all, so proud of you. I'm honored to know you, and I think it's very inspiring, the whole story and what your mission and your, company and your business is all about. And honestly, to be very honest, like whoever's listening and the ones who believe they can do something, it's not about reality, but you have that belief in yourself. Those are the kind of people, like, you're going to meet the haters and the people who judge and attack, and they can't do it. That's why they're attacking you, right? They don't have the ability to do it. So forget about them. But the fact that you are just unapologetic in your vision and your mission. And I just love what you talked about, just the nonprofit with the profit, right? And you're building a model that works for you, it's aligned for you, and it's impacting everyone at the same time. So why listen to anyone else, right? It's aligned to you and you're doing you, and you're already making a huge impact. And your son knows that, right? I mean, yes, you love me, and you made not only everyone feel seen and heard just by what you're doing and who you are. It's really about who you are. And your son also itself loves you for that, right? And your son supports you, and that itself is like you won in life. That is the impact. It has nothing to do with finances, right? So absolutely. And that's like a huge, powerful message, because we're just so conditioned to thinking, whoever is listening, that we have to hit the numbers and the metrics. And, at times, like, I'm still in that space, right? That, we go back into those beliefs of, what if I didn't hit those numbers, right? That means, am I a failure? Am I not doing business correctly? But you're thriving, you're in joy, and you've made an impact by just making people feel seen and heard, whether that's a nonprofit or profit or a hybrid model, right? And that's like the real definition of true entrepreneurship that's going to take you far in life, right? So you're already a winner. So I love that, you just stand for something that's so true and so sincere and so authentic. So we're all proud of you. And thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Yeah. And if for someone who's listening, who wants to start like that dream that you did in Build Empire that you and I are doing, a mission or some idea that they're meant to pursue, but they're just a little afraid to start, what would you want them to understand? I know we did talk about a few, but what would be that one thing that you want them to understand, or just one tangible step that they can take as well?
My best advice that I would offer anyone who either may be either afraid or sometimes even put down to believe that they're unable to attain a vision or a dream that they have, my advice to them would be to have courage and be kind to yourself and be kind in the journey. And let that courage take you not to the realm of understanding what the destination may look like, just versus experiencing the journey as it is and in its beauty as it is, and without judgment, with forgiveness and empathy. Because one thing that I always like to think, I would love to meet Oprah. I would love to meet Steve Harvey. I would love to meet Viola Davis. And, and the reason is, these are people sometimes I can imagine, if Steve Harvey says sometimes he used to sleep in his car, right?
Yeah.
Imagine how many people at that time when she was rising who have, when she was, she's done incredible work, Oprah, right? Imagine how many people told her to sit in the corner, right? That she wasn't able. I mean, I'm sure she has multiple stories of that. Imagine even Viola Davis, who's become one of the most successful actresses, and hearing her life story. Sometimes you realize that it's not really like the measured success. Oprah would still be Oprah, right? Steve Harvey would still be Steve Harvey. And Viola Davis is still Viola Davis. The only measurement is that in our conceptualization of their gifts, because we see their gifts on the visual stage, they have somehow now transitioned to society's conditioning of success. We now see them, right? But Oprah's talents are irrespective of the monetary success she's achieved.
Exactly.
She was always Oprah, irrespective of that. Steve Harvey is the same Steve Harvey that may have been sleeping in his car as he is now doing all these amazing things. And the point that I make to that is that don't allow the measurement of your success to define your journey anyways. And let the journey speak to yourself, because if you are journeying, the main achievement is really just enjoying it as it is without judgment. And the minute you start enjoying it, the blessings will manifest on their own. And that's my advice to anyone who's maybe being inhibited by people or society, is just do you.
Exactly. Love this message, is just really enjoying the process. And when you enjoy the process, like to your point, the blessings just come in, and there's a reason. And saw this on a reel, like there's a reason why whoever believes in the universe, divine, they put in this like huge mission and this like business idea into your heart, right? And you have a gift. There's a reason why all of you guys have a gift, and it's okay to put it on the world. You have the support. We've all done it, and it's very doable. But if you have the capabilities, just put it out there and enjoy it. and will come to fruition. We don't know the how, we don't know the when, and we don't need to know those. It's just more of just serve, right? Just serve and help others in what they need. They need all of your unconditional love and support and your gifts and bring it to life, right? So, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing. This was just a very powerful conversation. I'd love to go into the rapid fire round. So,
Sure.
let's see. One place in the world that has impacted your soul.
Medina.
Nice. Amazing. Amazing. If your current season of life had a theme, what would it be?
If a current season of life had a theme, what would it be? Like craziness, like with humor. Like just being crazy and humor and laughing a lot.
Yeah. I love those two, right? Like, I know when people say crazy, you're like, oh my God, but like crazy, but that's where the inner child comes out, right? So you can.
I laugh all day, and I'll laugh at things that are like I'll laugh at things that are tragically like devastating. They'll be like, "How are you laughing at that?" I'm like, "It's funny. I just felt it's funny, right?" Yeah.
Yeah. I
So,
know. Yeah, don't take it like seriously, and that's something that I've been learning because, like I said, with family, everything's like so hustle, bustle, serious. But I love how like you're always in joy and laughing in that inner child, right? Just enjoy the moment. Absolutely. And what is something people would be surprised to know about?
I love to dance.
What kind of dance?
I like to put on like I just like to dance in general. So I think for me, one thing that I self-care is I tell people when they ask me like how I've lost weight is I go into a wet sauna and I'll put on I'll put on like Money Gay with Nora Fatahi, or I'll put on like, divine songs, or I'll put on just any song that I like, or sometimes it's even meditative songs. One song that I like to kind of spiritually dance to is a Christian Hill song, which is Spirit Lead Me where my faith is beyond borders. And I don't believe that Jesus is God, but I as a savior, I do believe that, God, and just, I save myself in the way of manifestation of God, not, no, but irrespective of that, I do movement sometimes when I'm stressed to that song as a Muslim because it helps. I think sometimes when my body hurts versus like walking on a treadmill or hiking, swimming is a little bit more mental relaxation, but like dancing for me is very mentally and physically, and releasing my body in a way that feels like it heals it when it's kind of worn out. It helps, it helps roll my neck. It helps just roll my shoulders, helps me relax. So dancing, I love to dance.
Yeah. Amazing.
This is not very rapid fire. I'm sorry. I'm ruining rapid fire. Let's go quicker. Rapid fire. Stop talking after rapid fire. Rapid it. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. No, dancing is amazing. I also dance a lot. I've done younger days classical, Indian classical, and now I just do Bollywood, so Nara Fateh all the way. Half the songs I listen to is her.
Yeah.
So yeah, dancing I think just really makes you just more energized, but also more grounded at the same time. So I love what you said. And one more question. So in your life right now, if it were a chapter in a book, what would the title be?
That's a hard one to go rapid on. Stop being kind. For the Mercy Queen, stop being overly kind, I think.
Overly kind.
Yeah, I think stop being overly kind might be a chapter right now that I'm learning, because I have learned that my kindness in my life has really taken me to a lot of self-abandonment. And I think like stop being overly kind is a lesson at 48 that I've learned. Much you said, being over empathetic, oversharer. I think that's a hard lesson to learn, not only as a female, but as a human being, and as sometimes with your cultural dynamics. And so I'm not as, I think, overly kind as I used to be. I do protect kindness towards myself. So
Yeah. Beautiful. I mean, yes, absolutely. And I can relate to this. My whole life, it's the overly kindness and people took advantage of it. But at the same time, like I like giving to people, I'm not saying like it was like a regret or anything, but at the same time, also I need to take care of myself, and the people who don't understand it, it's totally fine, but I'm unapologetic, and the right people will understand that it's okay to be selfish in a way that's protecting your needs to fill your own cup, but also be kind. So absolutely.
I do have a book coming out real quick. Love me first, love me last. I'm not done with it, but I thought it may come out by the end of the year, but it may come out early next year. But that really does kind of talk about self-love versus self-abandonment. And it also talks about trauma and connected to respect, how trauma can alter your self-respect, and how love and connection can also be things that really need to understand. Because honestly, Vina, for someone who's just gone through so much trauma in my life, I don't think I really entered really what love meant like, especially self-love, until my 40s. And so 10 from up to the age of 10, it was like trauma. 20 to 30 was added trauma. 30 to 40 was dissecting trauma. And then it's come into my 40s that I'm like, hey, I know that I like this. I don't like this. I mean, one of the movies that I really love is, an old movie that maybe some people haven't seen in the new generation is Julia Roberts' Runaway Bride.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen that,
I've
but that
seen
was
it.
yeah, but that was, and another movie that I just, but the reason I loved it is because she didn't even know what kind of eggs she liked, right? And
Yeah,
there's so much of sometimes of like people going through their lives, like not knowing who they are and what they like and what they dislike. And that's something that takes time if you're being told what to like and told what to
right,
do, right?
right.
And so once you sometimes identify that, then you may be able to identify some of the internal things like, hey, I need this. Love looks like this. And
Exactly.
respect looks like this, because you may not even know what that look or feels like to you if you were just told
Right.
this is what it is. Make lemonade out of lemons, right? And so a lot of relationships that are supposed to be healing could be hurtful, and you need to identify why is it hurtful without being felt to be made guilty towards that feeling. And so, I know you were trying to close down, but I just wanted to share that because, I think a lot of what you're talking about in your own discovery and your own growth is the identification of self-worth, and the manifestation of your journey, and your light and the perfection of your light.
Yeah.
So,
And I can completely relate because I went through a lot of trauma itself. And yeah, I had family who said, this is how you're supposed to live and this is what you're supposed to do. And unlearning that took itself like 10 years, a journey. And I just finished it. I'm 34. But, at the same time, I'm glad I figured it out before because of the divine signals that I got, but it took, and I was telling someone this was 10, 15-year journey of really trauma and overcoming that trauma and so many inner wounds. And even now, like weekends, I journal and like the karmic healing and all of that. That's a totally different conversation. But at the end of the day, it's just been a very challenging journey doing this by yourself. And we didn't have coaches back then or therapy. And that's like another cultural dynamics. I was talking to someone who also said, like, if I tell my parents I'm going to therapy, like, what will they say? And so that's a cultural dynamics and all of that. So I totally understand that it takes a long time. And for me, it took about 10, 15 years. It depends. We cannot rush the healing. We should not be rushing it. But at the same time, just keeping at it and being persistent and trusting the process. But to your point, like, I think just unlearning ourselves and discovering more about ourselves, that itself was like a huge, beautiful journey for me. Like, I didn't know that I had this many gifts, this many talents, this much capabilities. And this is who I truly am. Like, I thought I was just like this okay girl. But now, like, where I am today is like, I'm just proud of what that helped me, who I became because of that trauma, right? At the end of the day. So thank you so much for sharing all of this. And I know we can go into another conversation, very deep inner work and inner conversations, but thank you so much for sharing your story and with your heart for us today. So many people are carrying incredible gifts and visions, but like we said, they have been conditioned to shrink, to wait, to seek permission, or to believe that their dreams are too big. I've been there my whole life, and I'm pretty sure, Shabana's been there and she just talked about that, but we are past that stage and now we're helping you guys, right? So, and your story is such a powerful reminder that our purpose does not require us to become someone else, right? It requires us to come home to who we already are. So I also love the message that you represent, that purpose and prosperity can coexist, and that compassion and ambition can coexist, and that healing and leadership can coexist, right? So the greatest leaders aren't the ones who never struggled. They are the ones who transformed their struggles into wisdom, so turned pain into power and use that wisdom to create change for others, which is absolutely what you're doing. So for everyone listening, I encourage you to connect with Shabana Markar and explore her incredible work through Miracles for Mercy and the Mercy Queen podcast and the many initiatives she continues to build around service and impact. And if today's conversation resonated with you, we have these conversations more through what I'm building through Sovereign Rise, a global collective community of sisterhood, basically. So it's a curated global leadership for founders, executives, CEOs, anyone that, are navigating seasons of identity shifts, reinvention, expansion. So we're going to be talking about whatever we had talked about today. So how to overcome conditioning and all of that. So we blend that soul and strategy with real business outcomes so that you can grow as a person and be the leader you're meant to be. We're all purpose-driven entrepreneurs, and we're also here to make manifest finances, right? Millions, because we'd all deserve it, right? So we're already launched and we're welcoming an incredible group of founding collaborators. So if you're interested in becoming a founding member, speaker, strategic partner. I love to connect with anyone. So reach out to me on LinkedIn and explore what's possible together so we can rise together. Until next time, remember the greatest impact you'll ever create begins when you stop shrinking and start becoming the fullest expression. So your best self of who you were always meant to be, right? So beneath the layers of the conditioning. So thank you so much again, Shabana, and
Thank
for
you.
joining us on Voices of Impact. And I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you.